Good morning, everyone here in the room in Høje-Taastrup and all of you following this event online. And this is day 2 of the deep dive into the future of European district heating. For those of you who didn't attend yesterday, my name is Katarina Rolfsdotter Jansson and I have the honor of moderating these 2 days. I am chair of the independent think tank Global Utmaning and I work as a moderator program host in the field of sustainable development. It's wonderful to have all of you here, and for those of you present here in this magnificent room in Høje-Taastrup, you need to get some practical details. The laboratories are right behind the back wall, or in this direction when it's time for a break. Emergency exits are clearly marked, as you can tell. There are plenty of them, and you also need the Wi-Fi. Because we are, of course, keen to interact with you here in the room and also with you following us online. And the Wi-Fi here for this building, you need to have that. It's capital letters HTTK. I repeat, HTK, and small letters GAEST. So capital letters HTK and small letters GAEST. It's the Danish for guest, so that's easy. And the Menti, you will see the Menti code will be on pretty much every slide. So when we have time, I'm very happy to take questions here from the auditorium, and then I might be using the catch the box that I used yesterday. You can also, of course, if you prefer to write on Menti, if you're here in the room, you can do that. But those of you following the event online, please write your questions to the speakers on Mentimeter. Excellent. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the real host of this event. He is right in front of me here, Rita Hummelshøj, Cool DH project coordinator, and he is also from the company Covi. So please, here, you that are in the room, give him a warm hand.
So thank you and good morning, everyone. On behalf of the whole Cool DH team, I warmly welcome you. And we have, some of you attended yesterday, but we also have plenty of new people and people watching digitally, and I welcome you all. And also to the municipality, thank you for hosting this event in Høje-Taastrup here on the second day of our conference. Cool DH, as I mentioned yesterday, but I will repeat here because we have new attendances, is called Cool DH because it's focusing on the co-production of cooling and district heating. And it's also because we focus on lowering the temperature of district heating systems to low temperature district heating. But we also look at what is needed if we go further down to ultra-low temperature district heating, and what could be the associated business models to doing that and using cooling and heating together. And then we think that what we have worked with is quite cool, so that is also kind of reason for the Cool DH name. We have the demonstrations on both sides of the sound in Sweden and in Denmark. And yesterday, for those who were there, you saw the installations in Brunshøj. And now we are in Høje-Taastrup. And you can say the main difference between the Swedish demonstration and here is that in Sweden it is a new development, and here we will see how it's integrated in the existing buildings. Also, I'll shortly repeat what we saw yesterday in Brunshøj. It was the utilization of surplus heat from cooling a research facility, a particle accelerator, where the magnets generate surplus heat that can be used for low temperature district heating in this area, and also for the city itself. And it reduces then the use of biomass for district heating. And this biomass, of course, can be used for other good purposes, or it can be exported to Denmark, where we can find some way of making heat of that if needed. But today we will look at, in Høje-Taastrup, especially the orange area you see there, which is close to a shopping mall, where we do the same, you can say, but it is the heat and cooling in the shopping mall that is the main core of it. We have put a program together which is not only about Cool DH, it's also other projects and inputs from people working with the same thoughts. And what we will hear today is about some other EU projects running in parallel where you can find good information. We will hear about what are the thoughts of Greater Copenhagen development with district heating towards 2050. And then we will zoom into Høje-Taastrup, what is the energy and climate strategy for the municipality and what does the utility do to reach the goals. And then, of course, what we do with the demonstrations here with the new PERT pipes from Lockster, Kingspan, and the business case and the installations at the city mall and so on. And in the end, we will also look forward from the learnings from this and see what could be a vision towards next generation of district heating from all that we have heard. There will be a little bit exhibited outside here also, and of course, in the end of the day, the site visits. So I can only say enjoy the day, and if you miss something, you can always go back to our homepage and contact me or the partners, and they will be happy to inform you of what you don't get today. Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Reto. It is now my honor and pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker here. We will start listening to Birger Lauersen. He is President, Euroheat and Power Manager, International Affairs, Danish District Heating Association, and you will talk about major findings from other EU-supported district heating projects. So, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Katarina. Oh. So, good morning, everybody in the room here and elsewhere. It's a very nice democratic setting. I suspect this is the meeting room of the local council with the councillors sitting around this circle, half circle here, semicircle here, and the representatives of the electorate sitting out there following negotiations in the local council. So that's a good setting, I think, for discussing a thing which is essentially local, district heating and cooling. And it's also a pleasure. I look very much forward to seeing the presentation on what the developments will be happening in Copenhagen, all very locally founded and based and locally controlled, which I think is a very good example of how district heating is helping us decarbonize our cities. I have been asked to give you a small brief overview of the outcomes or the findings of a number of projects carried out under the umbrella of the DHC Plus platform. But first, as Katarina said, I am President of Euroheat and Power. Euroheat and Power is the European Association for District Heating. We represent national associations, primarily national associations from many EU countries that organize the national district heating and cooling sectors, but we also and appreciate that we also have a lot of members in the sector of utilities, but also companies producing components, equipment for district heating, and also companies that provide services for the sector, like COVI and others, designing networks and so on. First of all, a little bit about. Is this one? Yes, that works. All right. Thank you very much. First of all, the district heating and cooling platform is an integral part of Euroheat and Power. It is a platform we created about 10, 15 years ago in order to get access to funding in EU project funding. And also to ensure that there's sort of cross-cutting dissemination of knowledge between countries and between operators and companies and stakeholders in the sector. The platform also carries out advocacy and communication with regard to the district heating and cooling technology development and funding in Europe to ensure that there's a continuous stream of funding and interest in district heating and cooling. And the platform also helps to replicate and scale up sustainable district heating energy in and you could say on the ground. So that is the platform under which we have conducted and are conducting a number of projects. There, let's shift. Yes. So the current project portfolio you can see here on this slide here. There is a number of ongoing projects. During 2021 and 2022, several projects in the DHC Plus portfolio reached the final year of their lifetime. That's the typical period in which the main results are made public. A lot of communication activities are foreseen and going on, and where final conferences are organized. In 2021, Upgrade District Heating, or Upgrades DH, which is involved in upgrading of district heating networks, and Magnitude, which is energy system integration, have concluded their projects. In 2022, this will also be the case for Tempo projects, Cool DH, and Reuse Heat projects, which is about digital aspects, low temperature and waste heat, as well as the Celsius initiative, which is supports for cities, and the RHC platform, which is on energy policy, and the RACES, which is on energy cooperation in clusters, in industrial clusters. The projects Reward Heat, a 50 million euro project about smart and innovative district heating, and REST DHC, about renewable district heating systems, are at their peak in the communication activities this year. But you will see the results of those projects in the coming year. So now I will go on and present individual findings from various projects. There's also, of course, the opportunity to access the websites of all these projects at the internet and see for yourself what goes on, who the partners is, and more detail on results and so on. We move on. That didn't work. We'll try again. I'm pressing next and nothing seems to happen. What if I go back? There, whoops. So, all right. Upgrade DH is focused on the modernization of currently inefficient district heating systems. It has impacts from the demo cases in Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Denmark, the Netherlands and Poland, and they were quite outstanding. In the projects, primary energy demand was reduced from 1,180 gigawatt hours to 996 gigawatt hours, which is a cut of approximately 15%. The share of renewable energy sources increased from 5% to 7%, and the use of waste heat sources doubled from 30% to 60%, or rather the share of waste heat sources doubled from 30% to 60%. Avoided emissions are estimated to be approximately 136,800 tons of CO2 emissions per year. This was achieved by a mix of improvements, measures ranging from technological and infrastructural investments, adoption of digital tools, and expert coaching and consultancy. And you can see here on the map the countries or some of the projects that were involved in this. So this was all about improving existing district heating networks in Europe. The next project, and here we move on. Yep. The next project is Reuse Heat, which covers urban waste heat recovery into existing district heating networks. And the project has assessed the waste heat recovery potential at 1.41 ettajoules, which is quite a high number, and that could potentially meet 10% of EU's heating and cooling demand. The Reuse Heat showed that the largest excess heat volumes of the reuse heat sources comes from sewage water and the lowest from metro systems. Prospective heat sources must be monitored closely before making the investment decision to identify accessible waste heat volumes and qualities. And the utilization of excess heat can both reduce cost and the need for primary energy supplies. And among the instruments implemented, that, as I said, the study assessed the potential for waste heat recovery. It also looked at who the necessary stakeholders are to realize the potential, and it also looked at barriers and risk, and also identified the need for a credit facility for facilitating the financing of these projects regarding urban waste heat. And then it provides a cool tool to compare the cost of different heat supply options from the perspective of the household owner developed, and low temperature district heating is shown to be cost effective. And there are some examples mentioned in data centers and a hospital and a metro in Berlin. We move on to Tempo, which is a project on temperature optimization for low temperature district heating across Europe. And here it has provided, or the outcome has been 6 technological innovations. First of all, an ITC platform for building substation supervision, a visualization tool for experts and non-experts on district heating, a smart district heating network controller, some innovative district heating piping system, some optimized building installation, and the use of decentralized storage buffers for low temperature district heating. So this was the Tempo project. We move on to the Magnitude project, which aims at developing business and market mechanisms and tools for providing flexibility in the European electricity market by increasing and optimizing synergies between heat, electricity, and gas. And the project has produced some policy recommendations. Aggregation of multi-systems enable the participation in the energy market. There is a need for harmonization of EU electricity markets. A framework is needed for collaboration, and the business models have to be improved. Multi-energy systems provide flexibility through the control of their technological components and the optimization of their cooperation. And the aggregation platform collects signals from the electricity market, aggregates the flexibility of the multi-energy systems, and proposes offers to the electricity market and service buyers. And the aggregation also increases the ability of multi-energy systems to participate in energy market trade markets and trade flexibility services by allowing decentralized installations not reaching the size threshold required for accessing the different markets to participate. And in Magnitude, there are also innovative market designs proposals to increase the synergies between the sectors I mentioned. We moved on to the Renewable Heating and Cooling Platform, which is a cooperation between stakeholders in biomass, geothermal, solar thermal, district heating, and heat pumps to define common strategy to increase the use of renewable heating and cooling. And there has been produced 3 strategic documents in the last few years. A 2050 vision of 100% renewable energy-based heating and cooling in Europe, which is shown to be possible by 2050. And the real challenge is not so much that it's not possible. The challenge is to set up coordinated strategies at European, national, and local levels to reduce the use of fossil fuels to 0 by 2050. There has been produced a strategic research and innovation agenda, which also shows that buildings, district cities, and industrial processes can be provided with 100% renewable energy-based heating and cooling even by 2040. And there's also an implementation report that offers an insight into the renewable heating and cooling community research, development, and innovation activities and trends. And it indicates that the priorities that are established by the RHC platform indeed is to a large extent being implemented. We move on to REST DHC, which provides a toolbox and guidelines on the topic of decarbonization of DHC, and it supports transformation of district heating and cooling in 6 regions in Austria, Switzerland, Germany, France, Italy, and Poland, and with the support of teams from Belgium and Denmark. And as you can see, it has revealed the potential for district heating and cooling. 60 million EU citizens are currently served by district heating, but the potential of district heating is up to 50% of the heat demand by 2050. And it also discusses policies, fundings, and which countries are where there is a high potential for renewable heating and cooling. We move on to the objective of Reward Heat, which is to demonstrate a new generation of DHC networks able to recover waste heat at low temperatures. And here the project has provided a tool, or rather use a times model to generate and compare different pathways to explore how the energy system will develop under different scenarios for each country. And they have used 3 different scenarios: conventional district heating, transition district heating, and future district heating. I assume the future district heating is the low temperature district heating. And they have analyzed these things in policy scenarios where aiming at net zero emissions by the sectors in 2030 compared to 2015, and also involved some World Energy Outlook sustainable development scenario and the World Outlook new policy scenarios, which could reduce CO2 by 60% by 2050 compared to 2015. And they have developed a serious game, which is an instrument to allow players to explore interdependencies between technical, economic, ecological, and socio-political aspects of district heating and cooling. And I have a couple of projects more that I'd like to mention. The Celsius project, which will end also this year. It's a collaborative, whoops, I should change the slide. It's a collaborative European hub for sustainable and integrated thermal energy solutions, supporting the energy transition in systems through a demand-based knowledge sharing and network, where among others, the Celsius Forerunner Group is a key actor in cities, so they can exchange knowledge about how they develop their district heating in a more sustainable direction. And finally, I get to the RACES project, which is it's a project that aims at that is aimed to support ecoregions, understood as industrial parks and clusters, to sort of interact, share heat and cold streams, and investing in renewable energy solutions and manage energy streams with the use of the RACES toolbox. And they have developed some tools as well: a self-assessment tool, a legal decision support tool, and an energy platform to manage the key to running, settling, optimizing the energy exchanges. So, as in conclusion, there are some major findings from all of these projects here. One is that through the modernization of suboptimal district energy system, we can have a significant impact in terms of energy efficiency, the increase in the use of renewables, and CO2 emissions reductions, and we can achieve that as desired. Urban waste heat can cover 10% of the heating and cooling demand in Europe, but awareness is low, and business and financing models are not mature yet. Low temperature district heating presents a huge opportunity for the sectors, and digitalization is one of the key instruments to achieve the goals. Renewables, the provision of 100% renewable energy-based heating and cooling system in buildings, districts, cities, and industrial processes in Europe is achievable by 2040. And district heating and cooling is a major enabler for integrating renewable heating and cooling in our cities. Energy system integration is possible, and are proposed to increase the synergies between electricity, gas, heat, cooling networks. And eco-regions and cities is a key for energy transition and can be supported through action-oriented tools and demand-based knowledge sharing in the among others, the Celsius Initiative. So that was pretty much the very brief status of all these projects here. As I said, you have also the opportunity to look at the websites and see for yourself all these projects. There might be some questions. I must confess I'm not personally involved in any of these projects, but I know there are people in the room here that might be able to help if you have some specific questions to some of the projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Birger Lauersen. There were no questions on the. Please stay next to me. Yep. There were no questions yet from the mentee, but they might be in the room. So just a hand up. Otherwise, I have a question for you. Yep. So please join me here again. Otherwise, yep, the camera won't catch you.
Sorry.
Impressive numbers indeed.
Yeah.
I have a negative number to ask you about. Yeah. How about the negative emissions? The possibility of BECCS, of withdrawing in the district heating system. We have seen examples of that are coming.
Yeah, and I think that is also a very interesting potential development that we see in some countries already being developed, and there's a lot of focus. I know here in Denmark, a lot of our members are looking into this, that through district heating and the use of the carbon that can be acquired, you could say, or recovered from for instance, the incineration of biomass, could help create sort of areas or cities with a negative emissions. So that's quite an interesting possibility. It's also interesting because, I mean, the Commission is looking into the creation of sustainable or what's it called? Carbon cycles, because if we want to in the future use carbon as an energy carrier, you could say, to combine that with hydrogen and produce fuels for aviation, for shipping, for transport, etc., we need to acquire the carbon somewhere. And rather than acquiring that from, say, coal somewhere, we can use that the accessibility of biomass and recover the carbon there and ensure that is entered into a sustainable carbon cycle, which then we relieves, recovered through the growth of biomass, and then recovered again for the use in these carbon cycles. This is a very interesting development that a lot of district heating companies in the Nordic market are looking into.
I'm in dialogue with an energy expert that is also a good friend of mine. We spoke last night about this, and he said, well, this part of the world could be like the new Middle East in terms of energy, in terms of negative emissions and using these techniques. So he was extremely positive.
We're looking in Denmark and the Nordic region, we're looking into the possibility of using our resources in wind, using our resources in biomass and other resources to create sort of, or be at the forefront of establishing these carbon cycles.
Indeed, very promising.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now let's hear about the development plan for district heating in the Greater Copenhagen Area. And the plan is, of course, towards 2050. And we have the pleasure to listen to Charlotte Søndergren. She's head of planning department H4. And you have our full attention, Charlotte.
Thank you. I could tell you a lot today. There is a lot of interesting things going on in H4 and in Copenhagen, in Denmark, in Europe, in the world, especially about next winter. How will we get district heating for our customers? But it's only half a year from now on. And today my subject is more going even further. But we have to remember that the world is quite different from what was just half a year ago when this analysis that I will present some of the results today have been made under other conditions, I would say. But I will try go through it, and you can ask questions while I'm speaking. But I could also say as viewer, you can look at the website for results, but I will warn you, they are in Danish. Because we are a Copenhagen-founded company, and we make those kind of things in Danish. So you have to speak Danish to see the figures if you want to know them in details. And I have to excuse that also some of the Danish words are also have passed through to my slides, of course, because I have to translate everything to English for coming here today, and I'm ran out of time. So Reto asked me, could you please take the last word, but I ran out of time, so we have to live with it, and I will go through the slides as well. And also my English is a little rusty, because I normally do not speak English at all. I am very founded in the district heating in Copenhagen. So I will take up from viewer and tell you much more in detail what we are doing. So then in the next 15 minutes, I think you have to say when I have to stop, because I could speak forever. I will touch upon the following subjects. How do our system looks today in Copenhagen area and in the Greater Copenhagen area. Also the possibility of expansion that has got a new meaning recently. The future role of existing and new technologies. And then, of course, mostly the future. I've especially been asked to give a link to the so-called FFH 50. It's the heat plan 50. We could call it in English. Of course, it has no English name, so we call it Heat Plans 50 today. But it's a project of the future of the Greater Copenhagen Area, make a collaboration between companies, the 4 grid companies in the Greater Copenhagen Area. And the names are mentioned there, so besides HO4, it's Vækst, CTR, and Vestforbrændingen. But we will, dependent on time, we will see how far we reach results from that project as well. First, a little of HO4. As you might know, all of you, HO4 is a Greater Copenhagen utility company. We are municipality owned. We cover 98–99% of the heat in Copenhagen. So when people hear, when the war came in Ukraine, lots of people want to know how many new customers do you have for your system? How many natural gas-fired individual person can you expand and put into a system? And I would say 0. In Copenhagen, we have none. But of course, the Copenhagen area is much larger, and in the municipalities in the outer space, there is a lot of expansion possibility. So we will see how it's going on. I will return to that. Beside district heating, you can see we also have 5 more utilities. It's water and wastewater, owned by 8 municipalities. It's Dragør and Herlev and Brøndby and Albertslund, as district heating is only Copenhagen founded. And beside that, we have town gas, used for cooking in the inner center. And we also have 2 new areas. It's cooling and wind in HO4. Yes. Overall focus is, of course, at sustainable supply and renewable energy. And we have a vision that we like to be a part of creating sustainability cities. And yes. Just to make a status, until recently, heat was produced using mostly waste and coal and some natural gas and oil. In 2012, the city of Copenhagen introduced a goal of becoming climate neutral in 2025. And of course, that also meant that district heating has to become climate neutral in 2025. Since then, HO4 has worked to achieve that goal, but how do we do it? Yes, as you can see at the figure to the left, yes, you can see the development since 1990 in the CO2 emission in heat per kilowatt hours, and it was at that time 200. And now it's below 50. Last year, I think it was last year it was 35 grams per kilowatt hour in our area. Since especially the largest element is that we since 2010 the use of coal has been reduced substantially. In 2090, the last coal-fired plant at Amagerværket was closed. And replaced by a biomass-fired unit. Beside beside that, we work with efficiency, of course, in both production and in distribution. For example, we work with lowering the grid loss. We are also working to lower the temperature, and we work with the consumers a lot, and how to involve them in savings and to use their energy more efficient. I will return to that a little, but I will give one example. How many of you have district heating in Copenhagen area? None? No, not. Oh, that was one. Those who have might be aware that we have a so-called afkølingstarif, a cooling tariff. It's a fee you pay if you send your heat back to us at a too high temperature. Because that means that you are not using your heat efficient enough in your internal radiator system at home. So it's a kind of a punishment, and that gives incentive to use your energy more efficient. So it's just a simple example of that kind of incentive we are using. We are using price incentives, of course, but also this kind of punishment incentives. As you can see at the right hand, I have problems with right and left. At right hand, you can see in the division in fuels in 2021, last year, it's total new figures. They are also published at the website, but it's also in Danish, of course. The figure shows the share of energy used for district heating in total for district heating in Copenhagen and in the Copenhagen greater area. The figures are very much similar, so it's the same figure. So as you can see, most of it are fossil-free. It's renewables. It's a lot of biomass because we just transferred our coal to biomass. And the last 15%, not with fossil fuels, is divided into two parts. One from waste, the fossil part of waste, and the other one is around 8% is used for oil and gas, natural gas, used in the cold winter, during the cold winter periods where we have to produce some of our heat with peak load capacity. But luckily, we still have 15% left because then we still have work to do. So we will continue the work to becoming total CO2 neutral. And what is the special focus for us? Yeah, the headings at this slide tells a lot. It might be difficult to work with, but the most important things is that district heating must have more strings to play on. Why do I say that? It's because let's make a robust system. So if gas prices rises, we can shift to power or to oil or to biomass. For example, this winter we saw gas prices rising with 8 or 10% compared to normal level, and biomass might only rise with a double, maybe. And this means that we can keep the prices for district heating in a more stable and probably a lower level than individual solution, depending on only one source. So, yes, as you can see at the figures, new technology might, I say, I don't know if it's the right word, but as you talked about, that the negative emission coming from the CCS technology shown at the upper left hand, we have not seen it into the system yet. But it might come, and if it comes, it can give negative emissions. And I will show the figures for how many negative emissions we can participate with from our system. But also power to X and surplus heat from power to X and from supermarkets will entering the system. From supermarkets, of course, it's a small part. From power to X, if it's coming, producing fuels for aviation, for example, as Birger mentioned, then you will get a huge amount of surplus heat. And we are preparing our system to be able to handle that kind of, and use that kind of surplus heat in the most efficient way. But as you can see, there's also heat pumps and boilers, and our big Amagerværket, our big power plant using biomass at the left side. Now I will go to the other part of my presentation. That's the link to the Heat Plan 50 that we made together earlier this year. It was published. I think it was earlier this year. Yes, time flies by. With the 3 other grid companies. And I will tell more from this study. We have created a basis, a common basis for the total area for future decisions. Not making the decision, but created a common basis for future decisions in 26 municipalities and 4 grid companies. We have worked with a vision-driven framework until 2050 that supports a future competitive and green district heating supply. And competitive, of course, because we have to lowering the price so it can compete with alternative if we like our district heating to be the future warming system in Copenhagen. I like to highlight 3 main points from the project. Maybe I repeat myself, but it's very important to notice that it's a vision project that look forward to 50. This means that we are not pointing out one solution. It has not been the goal to select one scenario, nor to make a detailed plan to 50. It has been the goal to expand the fields of possibilities. Normally when I say that and people understand it, they really understand it, but in the end of my presentation, one of you might ask me which scenario would you point on? But now I tell you again, it's not the point to choose a scenario, it's a point to prepare a system today to be able to be the basic of the future and what is seen in the future. We don't know if power to X, how it will come. We don't know if CCS will be the main technology. It will be seen, but we will be prepared and also prepared to take in a large number of heat pumps. The vision is, I will read it loud. The district heating is CO2 neutral and will remain the customer's preferred choice in 50. And district heating actually and flexible contributes to green conversion and sector coupling. That was also what I mentioned. How can district heating be an active part of using the surplus from other technology of another with another aim? Yes. The analysis is built on 6 scenarios. And those 6 scenarios, those are the ones that we are based our results on. As you can see, it's nicely in Danish, so I will explain that. Yes? 5 minutes, yes. I will explain the left side. It goes from the scenarios with a lot of thermal production, consist of waste, biomass. All of the scenarios are CO2 neutral. And to the right hand, where it's a switch to a fully electricity-based heat production using heat pumps, geothermal heat, and electrical heaters. So that's what elbaseret in Danish is. It's fully electricity-based heat production. Especially one subject was a very it's close to our heart. It's how the customers are doing around us, and we made quite lots of study of the customers that I only will present one result here, that we saw a conversion, an additional sales expansion of approximately 10% compared for today. But as I told, since the analysis, district heating has become even more popular. In the latest report from the government, they have pointed out that district heating is one of the preferences to avoid natural gas from Russia. And after that, we have been we have to look at the results again, and when we do that, we for sure will have a higher number than 10% of expansion in our system. So today we might look into a future with large expansion possibilities, and therefore we should also be aware of that we need more capacity. We need system enlargement. So we have to take that into account when we look into the future. Yes, maybe I should go further because time is running out. It always does for me. But we considered 5 technologies in special. Low temperature, just to mention one. Of course, low temperature goes hand in hand with heat pumps, because heat pumps can be used much more efficient if they only must produce heat at a lower level, for example, 60, 70 degrees. Some of our temperature in our grid today is sometimes up to 100, because we have a large grid, and we have to send the heat from large power plants, heat plants, to the customers far away. But we work on that, putting the new production technology closer to the customers and reduce and lower the temperature. That's the main idea of the system. And no more of this. I could tell a lot about low temperature. One more point. Low temperature, if we go much lower than the day level to the customers, that will mean large investment in the customer's internal radiator system. So it has to be a balance between what customers has to rebuild and lowering the temperature. It has to be a balance so we meet together and not putting a lot of investment needs to the customers without having the advantages in the system level. But we will balance that. As I told you, we have looked at the potential for CO2 capture and CO2 storage of waste plant and biomass plant, and we can, in the Greater Copenhagen Area, at the heat and power plant, come down to negative emission for 2.5 million tons CO2, and that's quite a large amount. We have lots of CO2 in our biomass plants in Copenhagen, of course, and that can be used, for example, for aviation. Now I will fly by my fantastic Power to X slide and give you the last result for today. Not the last result in the report, but that's a lot. But a kind of interesting result is that today district heating in the Greater Copenhagen Area is electricity producing. You can see in the figure to the left that we produce in Greater Copenhagen Area up to more than 1,000 megawatt power today. In all scenarios for the future, we will not produce much. Instead of, we will consume a lot. and we will consume in the most extreme consuming scenario. We will electricity consumption for more than 1,500 megawatt. Just to that, the difference between those two are 2,500 megawatt, and just for comparison, that's the highest power consumption in the eastern part of Denmark today, in the hour that you use most power in the eastern Danish system today. So this is a huge udfordring. Challenge, yes, thank you, a huge challenge. So yes, you can see that's just one of the results that we have to solve on our way. The last slide. This is the main result from the analysis from the heat plan, put together in 3.5 lines. We have a strong system in the Greater Copenhagen area of our district heating. New technology can be incorporated, and district heating can be that active player that we want to be in sector coupling, and it can contribute a lot to a CO2 neutral Denmark. Wasn't that nice result?
Stay, please. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Let's see if we have a question here in the auditorium to Charlotte. I have a question here. You mentioned that you wanted to keep it open in terms of techniques, but we also know that innovators and companies, they like to know ahead a little bit what comes in policies, other steering incentives, taxes, etc. How do you balance that one? Keeping it open, not giving any sort of incentive or direction to the innovators and the companies?
I see it that way, that we have to keep it open to make our system flexible. And lowering the temperature, making the customers flexible, their heat consumption flexible, all what we can do with flexibility, we do. We take that decisions now. And the rest, that will come, and then we have to take more decisions. It's not a big issue right now. We can do it right now to go the right way. But of course, at some point, we might have to go in the direction that you can put, so you can't go further with power to X or something like that. But it seems that it will fit. So
step by step.
Step by step, taking one decision at each time.
There is a little bit of a incentive here, and keeping the energy up. Some Swedish chocolate from Lund.
That's perfect.
Isn't it perfect? Yes. Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Marie-Louise Lemgart from Høje-Taastrup Municipality, and she's Chief Energy and Climate Advisor here in this municipality, and also, of course, a participator in the Cool DH project. You will talk about climate and energy strategy here, where we are now. You have our full attention.
Thank you. I will welcome you all to Høje-Taastrup Municipality, and I'm glad to see so many of you here. And I'm also very glad that we have been a partner in this Cool DH project. I will give you an overview of the climate and energy strategy and actions, goals, incentives here in Høje-Taastrup Municipality. I start with a little geographic. As you see, we are part of this Greater Copenhagen, and we are about 20 kilometers from Copenhagen. We are an infrastructural hub with a lot of transport. We have highways, we have railways, and a lot of infrastructural companies. We are about 52,000 inhabitants. A lot of jobs. People are coming from other areas to work here. That's not normal for a suburb. Normally you go to Copenhagen or so, but we have Copenhagen inhabitants coming here because we have so many companies that want to be established here, not least in the transport area. We have 3 towns, 3 stations, Taastrup, Høje-Taastrup and Hedehusene. And we were actually one of the first municipalities in Denmark that adopted a climate plan. That was in 2009. We are a growing municipality, both growing in population. We have 2 big city development areas, and we will go through at least one of them today when we are going to the Cool DH demonstration place. And a lot of, not least families, want to come out here. It's 20 kilometers to Copenhagen, and it's nice to come out from the dust and so on in the central of Copenhagen. And we also have a lot of companies, as I mentioned, that has established here, and more are coming. Actually, there are plans for data centers here. It's on the district heating, more or less on the district heating line. And it's nice to come here because we have highways, trains, and so forth. So, now back to the climate agenda. In Denmark, we have a national goal of 70% reduction of CO2 emissions from 1990 to 2030. We also have in the capital region an goal that have been adopted by the mayors in the municipalities. It's some years ago, but there they said there should be fossil-free energy in 2035. And then here in Høje-Taastrup, we want to be a little bit better. We adopted the climate plan last year. It's called the Climate Plan 2030. We have different goals for different areas, but the most interested for you here working with energy, it's that we want, we have a goal on net zero emissions and 2030, and that's both heating and electricity. This climate plan is pretty ambitious. It's on our homepage and it's also in English. That is developed under the UNC40 framework and under the Paris Agreement. Because here in Denmark, all the municipalities, maybe except 2 or 3, they will adopt such a climate plan to be adopted in 23 at least. But we did as one of the first municipalities, of course, adopted last year. And the goal in 2030 is 50% CO2 reduction compared to 2017. And net zero, of course, in 2050, as the Paris Agreement. We have a scenario. It's not that complicated. We have the emissions in 2017. We have a goal here in 2025, still with little emissions from the electricity and heat supply. And in 2030, almost all our emissions will come from transport. And in 2050, here is a little emission. I said the goal is net zero, but we had to, in the scenarios, we couldn't calculate that all heavy transport will be CO2 neutral in 2050, because we don't know the technologies right now. And we have a lot of lorries in this municipality. Here you can see the CO2 emissions in 2017. As I said, the transport is also the biggest sector, and grow and grow and grow, because the emissions from heat supply, electricity supply, that are the second and third emission sectors, we are fixing them more and more. Of course, not only with incentives, actions here in the municipality, but also with all the wind development in Denmark. And as also Charlotte said, on the district heating, because we are part of this transmission line going from Copenhagen to Roskilde. So we are getting more and more green, but we are also doing quite a lot in our little municipality here. And from our point of view, the energy efficiency, both in the electricity system, of course, and in the building, but also energy efficiency in the buildings, it's important from our point of view. So we do advice and guidance for homeowners. We are not a consultant, because we are not allowed to do that, but we have a lot of other companies that are very, very good in that. But we say to them, okay, maybe you should look at your house, look at your windows, look at your roof. There could be something you could get more efficient heating in your house. So that's on that level, and people ask us, can I get some support from somewhere in the municipality? We don't have any money, as all municipalities, of course, but we have some supporting schemes from the state, or somewhere they could get some support for energy efficiency. And then we have some cooperation with the housing associations. We have different projects where we have been part of installing intelligent metering in different flats, and look at the results together with universities. For example, we have a lot of cooperation with DTU and also other experts, because we are not experts here in the municipality, but we like to be part of projects like this, and give our buildings for example, metering and calculation, and just to be more and more innovative in our municipality, and also cooperate with other actors and partners here in the municipality. And of course, we have city development, and when we develop those more or less new areas, we of course try to get as energy efficient buildings as possible. But the law and other tools that we can use is not always in the line with what we really want to do, because there are private developers and so forth. So there are, we try to do as much as we can in the plans that had to be adopted by the politicians. But it's always, nowadays, the climate, the energy efficiency, it's getting more and more a prioritized agenda, but always the laws and so far are a little bit slower. And of course we have our own buildings, as you can see here. Actually, this is not energy renovated, and that because that the municipality administration will move to another building in the end of this year. So don't look at the energy efficiency here, please. But we have our building, schools, nursery schools, other administrative places and so far, where we also look at the indoor climate, the energy efficiency, intelligent metering, and flexible energy consumption, and use the buildings as a store for heating. A lot of this in cooperation with our district heating company. And the goal in 2030 is energy efficiency, increase the energy efficiency with about 1% a year. Renewable energy. We have one windmill here, and that IKEA windmill. And we are not going to have any more. But we look at solar panels, both on roofs. We will go to City 2 and see one of the biggest roof PV installations in Denmark. We don't have any PV installations on ground right now, but there are planning for at least one in an old grave quarry. And of course we have PV installations on some of our municipality buildings. The man at the right, that's our mayor. He was invited to have a speech here, but unfortunately he's a very, very busy man, so I will say welcome to all of you from him too. Transport. As you saw in the beginning, the transport sector will be the CO2 emission sector that will almost take all from 2030. So until 2030, we had to do quite a lot for the transport. Prioritize the cyclists. We are not a cyclist municipality, as for example in Copenhagen or even Albertslund, but we try to increase it. Our municipality fleet is electrified to about 50% today. That will be 100 in 2030. We will electrify our buses. That's together with our other municipalities. And of course, we will install a lot of charging infrastructures here to our municipality buildings and also in the official public roads. I will tell a little bit about the district heating too, but the district heating company will come after. So our district heating part of heating has from 17 to 2021 increased from 66 to 72%. All our new city developments are district heating, and we have a goal to transform the natural gas heating for houses to district heating. So in the beginning, in the last part of 21 and in the beginning of 22, we have adopted in the municipality all the gas areas. There is a dotted one, but that was adopted here 2 days ago. So all natural gas plant areas are actually now planned for district heating. So now we are really develop district heating in former gas areas. So here you can see our calculations. We have about 2,000 natural gas installations in households. We don't talk about the industries, but in the household. And in 4 years, it will really decrease. Here is 700, but maybe it will go even lower. It depends if we got all the equipment, all the people, because the district heating company are there. And our oil will go from about 500 to 100 in 4 years. So I think we will reach our goals in 2030. And the real challenge is the transport sector to really reduce the CO2 emissions in the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Marie-Louise. Please stay with me and see if we have questions coming up here. Sometimes it takes a minute or two, so just a quick, oh great, we have hands in the air here. Let's see, all the way, we start all the way in the back. Can you stand up, please? No, you get this. You speak into the, catch the box. Here you go.
How does this work? Okay,
Yeah,
first of all, this might be a question for the upcoming district heat sector, but you mentioned that Høje-Taastrup has a goal of becoming 100% renewable in the heating sector by 2030. How does that become reachable when relying on heat from HO4 that mentioned having a goal of 2050?
Well, we don't really have heat from HO4, we have from VEX, but of course we have heat from the same central heat and power plants in Copenhagen. But when I said it, it's the VEX, the transmission systems goal to have 100% CO2 neutral heating in, actually before 2030. And we also have local producing for the district heating system. So we have both the transmission and also local. And the local activities, Astrid from Høje-Taastrup district heating will tell you more about later.
He looks happy.
Yeah.
Excellent. Charlotte had a question?
I was a little, maybe I just don't follow the discussions or number figures that close. It's more than 50% coming from the transport sector. Is that special for Høje-Taastrup municipality, or is it a common for all municipalities? Because I think it's quite a hard challenge you get there, and I have very difficult seeing that you will reach that goal just in a normal way.
Yeah, as we have in 2017, we had about 54%, and today I think we are about 60%, and that's not normal for a Danish municipality. It's a bit higher. I think that figure is about 40% or so for a normal municipality. But we have so many companies. We have DSV, we have Danish Danske Fragtmænd, we have a lot of transport companies, and we are a hub here. And they are close to the highway, we have the railway, and why not be established here and not to other municipalities? So
very much dependent on other people developing new kind of transportation fuels for the transportation sector.
We also have Volvo trucks here, and I'm a Swede, so they will fix it.
They have a good goal. We have one question for you here. Which buildings are being used for thermal storage for the district heating?
Well, we are working with it. For example, a pretty big school, and we are, I don't know exactly right now how much it is, but there are a project together with the district heating, together with the scientists from Danish Technical University that are calculating and, screwing on all the...
Turning the knobs
And so far. So they are trying to find out of that.
Excellent. Well, very impressive what you're doing here in Høje-Taastrup.
Yeah.
And of course, you will also get some fuel for the future work, some locally, well,
Yeah.
maybe not locally harvested, but at least put together delicatessen
And it's
from
Swedish.
Swedish.
Yeah,
from Lund.
that's nice.
Well, thank you very much, Marie.
Thank you.
We have time for coffee, but actually before we leave, there were some questions that came in late for Charlotte, so that's why I asked you to keep the microphone, because these are important questions. Will the results from your study be presented in English?
I cannot answer that question, sorry. I will take the question with me and see if it's possible.
Excellent. Another one. That's also important. What is your current approach to replace the heat peak loads in wintertime with RES?
What was the beginning of the question?
What is your current approach to replace the heat peak loads in wintertime with RES?
We will replace the heat, the peak production with biofuels and with boilers using renewables from electricities and with heat pumps, and we will use the consumers moving their consumption a little away from the peak load. So there's a lot of elements to do that. So of course we will.
Excellent. And one final question, then you will have coffee. But they're good questions, and they came in late after you sat down, so that's why. Is new CHP completely out of the question in the future for you?
Oh, you have to repeat.
Is new CHP completely out of the picture for you in the future?
For that question, I cannot answer yes or no, because those expansions that we are looking into in the nearest future, it demands quite much more capacity. So we do not in the Greater Copenhagen Area has plans for new CHP, but I would say that kind of expansion that we are looking into, we have to reconsider how to serve the new customers.
Okay, thank you. I will let you go now, Charlotte. And before we leave, two pieces of important information. If you have not signed in yet, the list is just right outside. Please do so. And if you drove a car here, Lorna, would you stand up, please? Go to Lorna and she will explain where to park so you don't get a ticket. So if you drove a car, please go to Lorna. And I forgot to give Bewa chocolate. Not okay. Here you go. And now we have coffee break right outside, and we meet back again in 15 minutes, so 10:30. See you then. Bye-bye. All right, welcome back, and I hope you who are following us online are ready for the next session, and that you also got some coffee. And I must reveal a secret: the candy that I'm handing out, Marcus told me, it's actually Danish licorice that is covered in chocolate in Sweden. So it's really a joint venture product that the guests or the speakers are getting. So I thought it was a bit of a fun detail. Now more details about the topic we are here to talk about. We will talk now about climate and energy strategy here in Høje-Taastrup. And sorry, that was the wrong line here. We will talk about towards 100% green district heating here in Høje-Taastrup with Astrid Birnbaum, who is director here of the Høje-Taastrup Energy District Energy section here. So please stand up here, join us, and you will have a warm hand.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a short presentation of Høje-Taastrup District Heating Company. I'm a CEO or director in the company. I have been here for 6 years, but I have been working with district heating for more than 30 years. So who are we? I was told I have to make a little bit of a history from us. But district heating in Høje-Taastrup, it all started in 63. 70 consumers wanted district heating, and there was a coal plant was established. So it is almost 60 years ago that district heating started. It expanded with heat from that coal plant. And in 1984, then the transmission companies were established. And we got district heating from VEX, and the whole district heating in Greater Copenhagen started there. Before that, there were only small plants in the different municipalities. But now this two transmission companies and the transmission system was established. And from 2011, before that, we were 3 district heating companies in our municipality. Now we are 1, and this is this company. So a little bit more about us. We are a consumer-owned district heating company. I think there are about 350 district heating companies in Denmark. 50 of them are owned by the municipalities, like HO4, you heard Charlotte tell about that. And the other 300, they are consumer-owned. And we are in top 3 of size of the consumer-owned district heating companies. We have a heat sale about 1,100 terajoule per year. And we have now heating buildings, started with 70 consumers. Now we have almost 8,000 heated buildings with district heating. So more than 70%, actually 72%, of the heat demand in our municipality are heated with district heating. We have a vision that we provide sustainable, secure and cheap district heating, but we also provide district cooling for some of the larger business buildings. We are 20 employees. And we are a part of the Greater system you heard about earlier. So our district heating is now 85% CO2 neutral. Even we are one of the largest consumer-owned companies, then we are only 20 employees. So I can be a little bit proud of all that we have achieved now for the last 10 years in our municipality and in our company. As I have told before, we are part of the large district heating system in Greater Copenhagen. And you can see Høje-Taastrup is in the western part, in the blue area. So we are a distribution company, like 17 other companies who buy their heat from the transmission company. And then we have this orange, which is another heating transmission company. And these two companies and the district heating system are connected. So that is why we can say that you get the same heat if you live in the western part or in Copenhagen or in the northern part of Copenhagen. It is about 30 kilometers and we get the same heat. So what we do, we buy most of our heat from the transmission company, and our district heating is based on that 60% are combined heat and power from sustainable biomass, and 30% is also combined heat and power, but it is from waste incineration. And then we have some of our own local production, approximately 10%, raising to 15% within the next 2 years. That comes from the local production. So what I think is important to say just in one slide, because I can also talk a lot, like you heard Charlotte said, and but what is this district heating? District heating is important for the green transmission. It is important that we can utilize the central production from the transmission system, looking into these scenarios which you were presented for earlier. We don't know in the future what kind of production will come in. Now, most of it is biomass. It will be biomass for the next years, but in the future we'll have new technologies coming in, and we are prepared because we have this transmission system that is connected to the different distribution networks. It is also important that we in the distribution different companies can use the local heat sources that we can get in. That will help the big system, and it will help our way to the green transmission. It is important to look at sector coupling. Of course, it is this electrification. It is also using other heat sources like surplus heat, like wastewater, like groundwater. Use the energy you can get from that to make local production. Also, heat to store heat is also important, and that is why we are establishing a heat storage together with VEX. That is a 70,000 cubic meter heat storage. You will be able to see it this afternoon, and basically it is. You can produce heat cheap, and sometimes put it on a heat store and use it when heat is more expensive to produce. And also what we look into is a lower temperature. We have areas with lower temperature, and we go down to 55 degrees in some areas. Finally, I just will tell you about some of our local production, which is about 10% now, raising to 15% in a year. We use surplus heat from data centers. Right now we have Nordea Bank, that is a data center, and large heat pumps using the surplus heat directly out in the distribution network. It has been in operation from 2020. And we have another a data center, Global Connect, and we have made an agreement with them using their surplus heat into a 4 megawatt heat pump, which we own, to make district heating. And there will be more large data centers to come in our municipality. It will be up to 50 megawatt district heating. That is such much surplus heat that we won't be able to use it in our distribution network, but it has to be planned together with a transmission company where they have larger pipelines to put it into. We have combined heat and cooling. Right now we have 4 large heat pumps producing heat and cool. And you can see the photo here, the pictures here from our first large heat pump, which went in operation in 2016. And it provides a large fruit and vegetable market with cooling. And then you get the surplus heat from this cooling into our district heating network. Finally, then we have another local heat source in groundwater. We have in area rising groundwater. We pump that groundwater up. We use that energy like a heat source to a large heat pump. And we produce 1.5 megawatt heat. It is also a win-win for the inhabitants because they don't get less water into their basements. And we lead the water into a creek, which some also think is a good idea because it gets colder out and it's good for the fauna of the creek. Finally, we also have a solar heating system, a small one. It is only 3,000 cubic meters, square meters, and it has a capacity of up to 1,500 megawatt hour. And we don't have a heat storage to that, but it is leading just out into our distribution network. So that is for me. I think we have a little video. We have made a video from this district Cool DH project. I haven't said much about that. I have more made a presentation of our district heating company.
Cool DH-projektet nytænker energisystemet og udvikler innovative løsninger med lavtemperatur fjernvarme. I projektet er det boligområder, erhvervsbygninger og kommunale ejendomme, som her i Junglehuset, der bidrager til udviklingen af projektet, og som samtidig får gavn af projektets resultater. Som det sidste og samlede element i projektet, der installeres nu en stor varmepumpe i indkøbscentret City 2, som blandt andet får el fra solcellerne på taget. Denne video tager os med og viser, hvordan lavtemperatur fjernvarme og store varmepumper er et essentielt element i Høje-Taastrup Fjernvarme og Høje-Taastrup Kommunes fælles rejse mod et effektivt, fleksibelt og smart energisystem.
One of the keys to being able to use the many local energy resources cost effectively is that consumers' heating needs are able to be met with low temperature district heating when the building's heat management uses forecast to become flexible customers. Høje-Taastrup District Heating assist customers in preparing their homes for low temperature district heating. For example, in Østerby, where newly developed heating pipes will make sure that the buildings will be supplied with low temperature district heating from City 2's new heat pump in the future. The installation of the new heat pump sets the stage for several ambitious demonstration projects that Høje-Taastrup District Heating carried out in recent years. The Cool DH project is supported by the EU and demonstrates how local renewable energy resources can best be used. The construction of a 70,000 cubic meters pit storage is underway. The pit storage will function as a buffer for the capital region's district heating system. It is expected that the heat storage will be charged and discharged 25 to 30 times a year. The district heating is stored when it's cheap to produce or in surplus, and the heat from the storage is used when it's otherwise expensive to produce. Homeowners in the eastern part of the municipality have for many years benefited from the fact that drinking water was extracted from the groundwater under their homes. It has kept the groundwater level down. That changed a few years ago when the need for groundwater extraction stopped. This resulted in water in the homeowners' basements. Høje-Taastrup district heating has now solved the homeowners' problem with the establishment of a large electric heat pump, which uses the energy from almost 1 million cubic meters of groundwater annually, and then redirects it to a nearby creek, Mølleåen. The heat pump has an output of 1.5 megawatt, which annually produces approximately 10,000 megawatt hours, equivalent to the heat consumption in approximately 550 households. Høje-Taastrup district heating has made an agreement with Nordea on the supply of surplus heat from the bank's data center in the municipality. The district heating company owns and operates a large heat pump that uses the surplus heat from Nordea's cooling plant. The heat pump is expected to produce approximately 12,500 megawatt hours per year, corresponding to the heat consumption of approximately 700 households. Høje-Taastrup district heating has established a new low-temperature prepared grid and 19 new heating plants in the apartment buildings of Gadehavegård. The residents have decided that the system should deliver a comfortable temperature of 21 degrees Celsius in the nearly 1,000 apartments. With this decision and the installation of so-called smart auto-tuning, the heat supply is dynamically regulated from the 19 heating plants so that it precisely meets the need for heat and hot water. The new smart district heating system in Gadehavegård has given the residents an extra 10% savings on their heating bills, on top of the savings that resulted from the new district heating pipes and modern heating plants.
Som direktør for Høje-Taastrup Fjernvarme, så er jeg stolt over at vise, hvordan vi som et forbrugerejet andelsselskab hele tiden arbejder på at udvikle vores fjernvarmesystem til at være mere bæredygtigt og effektivt til gavn for vores kunder. Og det gør vi netop ved at vise disse projekter, som vi lige har set. Lige nu står vi på taget af City 2 og kan se, hvordan hele taget er fyldt med solcelleanlæg. I takt med, at City 2 har energioptimeret deres drift, så har de nu solcellestrøm i overskud. Denne solcellestrøm kan vi udnytte, i det vi kan anvende den i vores store varmepumpe, der kommer til at stå her, og der både skal producere fjernvarme og fjernkøling. Denne fjernvarme og fjernkøling sender vi ud i vores ledningssystem og forsyner dermed ikke kun City 2, men også de omkringliggende kunder i området. Sammen med vores rådgiver på dette projekt, som er COVI, så vil vi dele erfaringerne fra Østerby-projektet. Og første konkrete bevis herfor er, at vi i en boligforening i Herlev Kommune med 160 lejligheder, de har besluttet at forny deres fjernvarmeinstallationer netop med baggrund af de erfaringer, som vi har vist her fra Østerby.
DH-projektet støtter således byer i deres bestræbelser og indsatser mod nye, effektive fjernvarme- og fjernkølingssystemer. Her i Østerby, der er det gamle og forældede fjernvarmenet nu redesignet og opgraderet til et nyt lavtemperaturnet. Og her bliver vores daginstitution Junglehuset tilsluttet. I DK 2020-samarbejdet, der er vi ved at udarbejde en ny klimaplan med konkrete indsatser frem til 2030 og med målsætning om netto-nuludledning i 2050, som understøtter implementering af Paris-aftalens mål i Danmark. Et væsentligt element i det arbejde, det er overgangen til lavtemperaturfjernvarme, da det både mindsker ledningstabet og sikrer en bedre udnyttelse af overskudsvarme og af vedvarende energikilder. Den kommende klimaplan beskriver vejen til at opnå de ambitiøse mål, Men vi kan som kommune ikke komme i mål alene. Så vi ønsker at intensivere eksisterende samarbejder og invitere til nye, både med borgere, med virksomheder og boligselskaber i kommunen, samt på tværs af kommunegrænser og med vores forsyningsselskaber. Vi er stolte over at være en del af Cool DH-projektet, og vi ser store perspektiver i de fremtidige muligheder med udbygning af lavtemperaturfjernvarme i Høje-Taastrup Kommune.
Astrid? Very impressive. I must say this is very impressive.
Thank you.
There is a question, yes.
Thank you.
Please join me a little bit closer up so the camera catches you. There is a question from the viewers online. At what temperature level is the waste heat from the data centers provided? Are the service of the data center air or water cooled?
It is water cooled, and we get the surplus heat is about 20-25 degrees. And then we let this surplus heat into our large heat pump, which is our investment. So we just get the surplus heat, and then we make the rest and own the rest. We get the surplus heat for free.
Good deal. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. You'll be back for a short panel talk at the end of this cavalcade of presentations. Thank you. Oh, and also, of course, you will get the licorice combination here. They were hidden behind because I think they were blocking the camera. Here you go. Thank you so much. And now we move on with good examples. We will talk more about multi-layer PERT pipes. And here with us is Peter Jorsal, Product and Academy Manager at Kingspan Log Store. And you are of course, also participator in the Cool DH project. So you have our full attention.
Thank you. So do you hear me? Yes, I think so. So hello, everybody. Now it will become a bit more product technical, and there will be a lot of information on my slides. And I can see from the back end, you need your very sharp glasses actually to read it. But don't worry, I will guide you through the takeaways on each slide. And then I believe that the presentation will be available for everybody afterwards. So the title of my presentation is Cool DH Development of New PERT Multilayer Pipe, so a pre-insulated pipe with a new media pipe. But I would also like to elaborate a little on what is actually the right choice of a pipe system, no matter if it's low temperature or whatever it is. And I would like to have a hint when I have 5 minutes left. So just a little about the right choice. I often meet the opinion that when we talk low temperature, then the only right choice is a plastic pipe pre-insulated system. I do not fully agree on that. I believe in that no matter what is the temperature, then you shall always evaluate on the specific project, on the assumptions that you are having for the operation or lifetime, what will be the total cost of ownership, so the cost over lifetime. And then you have to take into consideration all possible pipe systems that are available. And consider, shall it be single, twin, what shall be the insulation series, what are the requirements for recycling materials at end of lifetime, and so on. And then you shall make your decision. So please don't pre-assume always what is the right system, but evaluate on each project what will be the right system. But now to the Cool DH project. And I believe then it maybe is difficult to read from the back end. But part of the Cool DH project has been to develop a new flexible pipe system with a new media pipe. And the new media pipe for this project is a PERT pipe. So PERT is polyethylene for raised temperature. So it's polyethylene that can be operated with higher temperature than normal polyethylene. The pipe system for this project is developed as a SDR 7.4, or in a more popular way, a 10-bar system. But alternatively, we can consider to have it as 6-bar system that can be considered for the future. The media pipe itself is PRT. On the outside of the PRT, we have a layer of aluminum. And the layer of aluminum have two functions. It shall secure that we will not have oxygen from the outside diffusing through the wall of the pipe into the water. And why is that? That is because if we have oxygen in the water, then this oxygen will come into the system in the houses, and we have a risk of corrosion of steel pipes in the housing systems. That is actually a requirement that plastic pipes for district heating purpose shall always have a diffusion barrier for oxygen diffusion from outside and into the media. But the aluminum layer on this new developed pipe has another function, which is also very important. It has the function that it shall secure that the water vapor that will diffuse from the media, so the hot water, through the cell wall, out through the insulation, hopefully through the insulation and out through the casing and to the ground, that this diffusion will not be there. So if you don't have the diffusion barrier, then the best would be that the water vapor diffusion, which is the physics, it will happen no matter what on plastic pipes, that the water vapor will diffuse all the way out. But depending on the condition that the pipe system is operated in, then there is a risk that this water vapor will condensate in the insulation, leading to wet insulation, leading to higher heat loss over the lifetime. So in this project, the aluminum barrier have the function to stop this water vapor diffusion, and there's no pipes on the market that have this barrier. And then there is on the outside of the aluminum layer, there is a protective PRT layer, but only for protection of the aluminum barrier. So that was the media pipe itself. If we look on the pre-insulated pipe, then this pipe for the CoolDH project is equipped with a surveillance wire. And this surveillance wire shall make it possible to detect if insulation will get wet during the lifetime. So it can be installed with detectors so that we can detect if moisture will come into the system and exactly where is the moisture coming in so that it's possible to repair. But part of the project is actually also having this detection unit to the system and then being able to follow if the aluminum barrier really is effective. And if it's all, we also have an effective solution where we make coupling of two pipes. When we make a new media pipe for pre-insulated pipe systems, then we have to qualify it for the purpose it shall be operated with. It means that we have to do first a lot of internal tests, and then we need to document it all via external tests done at external accredited test institutes. All with the purpose of qualifying the pipe system for the purpose it's supposed to operate with. So we have tested these pipes with hydrostatic test. I'll just briefly come into each of the tests, dive a little deeper into some of them. But to give you the overall view of the tests we have done hydrostatic test. We have tested the media pipe for oxygen tightness. We have tested the media pipe for water vapor tightness. We have tested our solution about the couplings for water vapor tightness. And then we have tested the fittings or couplings for the PRT system. If anybody would be interested in having the external test reports, then they are available on request. And here I'll just give you the takeaways. So the takeaway from the hydrostatic pressure testing is that this test actually takes 15,000 hours to do, so almost 2 years. It's done at the external institute, SWEDAC, and all tests were according to the requirement. So the hydrostatic test is passed with a positive result. Then we have tested the efficiency of the aluminum diffusion barrier for oxygen diffusion. There is actually a requirement in the European standard for pre-insulated flexible pipe systems about the oxygen diffusion. So here the test institute knows how to test it and what is requirement to the test results. And this test has been done by Test Institute Kiva, and all requirements were met, so thumbs up on that one as well. Then we have tested for the water vapor tightness for the diffusion barrier. And here there is actually no requirement in the European standard. Everybody knows that about the physics, that there will be a water vapor diffusion. And basically, the standard somehow included in describing that when you calculate the heat loss from a flexible pipe system, then you shall multiply a factor on your declared so-called lambda value that tells something about the heat loss property of the material. You shall multiply with a factor, a certain factor, if you don't have an efficient water vapor diffusion barrier. So that you somehow include in your calculation that over lifetime, insulation might get wet if water vapor will not get the whole way through. So if you have an efficient water vapor diffusion barrier, then you don't have to multiply with this factor. But the standard does not include anything about requirement for water vapor tightness or anything about how to measure it. But we have done measurements of the water vapor tightness at Danish Technological Institute. We have made tests on a so-called PEX-A pipe that is very commonly used in plastic pipe systems and not having a water vapor diffusion barrier. We have tested what is the water vapor diffusion in such a pipe. And then we have tested what is the water vapor diffusion in the new PRT pipe with the aluminum barrier. And you can, on the column to the left, you will see the water permeation on a PEX-A pipe without the water vapor diffusion barrier. And in the column with the circle around, which is almost not a column, there you will see that there is more or less no water vapor diffusion on the PRT pipe with aluminum barrier. So having this test, we believe that we have proved that the pipe itself has an efficient barrier for water vapor diffusion. Then we needed to test also the couplings. So when you connect pipes, you have to take away this aluminum diffusion barrier. And if you don't do anything when you have connected the pipes, then you will have water vapor diffusion at this point. So we need to make instruction to the installer that then they shall wrap on the side an aluminum barrier around the coupling. And we wanted to test, is that manual installed diffusion barrier efficient as well? So we have taken a 5-meter pipe, taken away the diffusion barrier 7 places on this 5-meter pipe, and then we have tested this pipe without doing anything on those places where we have taken the aluminum barrier away, and also if we would make this manual installation of a diffusion barrier that is supposed to be done on the site by the installer. And what you can see from from the columns here. So the left one is the diffusion from a pipe with where the aluminum barrier is not removed, and the one with the circle is where we have removed the aluminum barrier and installed, as we would do on couplings, and manual installed diffusion barrier. The one to the left of that is if we would not do anything on those 7 spots, yes. So here we have a little diffusion. The question is, does it matter anything? So that is why it's important to have the detection on the pipe system. And here we have installed a detector that continuously will survey if there will be any place where the moisture level will change in the pipe. So if moisture will come in, from the beginning it's dry. So if moisture will come in, it will become wet, and then we can detect where is it, and then evaluate what is happening. So far, there's no change, so the system is completely dry. Then we have tested the couplings, and all test requirements are met. One part of the scope for this project was also to develop an electrofusion welding coupling. And we have not been able to do that because on the market there is not existing any electrofusion couplings for pressure class 10 pipes. It exists for pressure class 6 pipes, but not for pressure class 10. We believe it can be developed. The principles, the concept is there, so it's just about developing for pipes with a little higher wall thickness. Few pictures from the production. We produce ourselves the PRT pipes with the aluminum barrier and the protection layer. In our production of the pre-insulated pipes, we have had challenges by producing the very big pipes, 110 millimeter, pressure class 10, which are relatively stiff. So for the future, if we will take this in as a future standard program, then we need to find solutions that will secure the safety for the production workers. And then the last slide, and that is considerations for the future, because now we are in the time where we have to evaluate what will we do in the future with this product. We believe ourselves it's a very good product, but we need to be sure that there is a request from the market from this product. So that is what we are evaluating. One challenge that we are working with is that PERT as such is not defined as a media pipe material in the European standard for flexible pipe systems. We have tried to push it into the standard, but we didn't succeed for different reasons. There will in the future be a new standard for low temperature flexible pipe systems, and in that standard PRT will be in the standard. But in the existing standard, PRT is not mentioned, and that is a challenge. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. Let's see if we have any questions from the auditorium present here in the room. There is one question here.
Yep.
Yes, hello, Peter from HO4. Thank you for the presentation. What kind of insulation material do you use in this pipe? Maybe you told it, but I don't know.
No, actually I didn't talk about the insulation material. We use for this pipe, it's a pure foam insulation material, cyclopentan based, special developed for the production of these flexible pipes because they shall be very flexible. So the insulation shall also be so soft that it can handle being that flexible. But meeting all the requirements that are in EN 15632, the standard for flexible pipe system.
And do you have a barrier outside this
Yes.
installation as well?
Yeah. We have a barrier that is, and that is actually part of our standard product today. So I didn't actually mention it. I think it was maybe even mentioned in the presentation. But we have a barrier co-extruded into the to the casing. It's a so-called EVOH barrier, so a polymer barrier that secure that the insulation gases that is so important for the insulation property of the pipe will not diffuse out over lifetime, and secure that you will not actually have atmospheric air diffusing into the pipe, because atmospheric air is a bad insulator compared to the gases that are in the pipe. So that is standard for these pipes. It's co-extruded into the casing. So not developed for this project, but already existing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Peter. We do have a short panel talk at the end of this cavalcade of good examples. So if more questions pop up, just make a note of them, write them in the Menti or in Mentally, and you might be able to answer them later on.
Yep.
And some energy for you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now a demonstration case. We will listen to the cool DH Høje-Taastrup business case and monitoring with the cool DH team members, Reto, that we met several times already, leading project manager Kobe, and Sten Gravenslund Olesen, project manager also Kobe. So please give them a warm hand.
Happen here, maybe. Let's see. Yeah. It's jumping around a little bit, so I'm sorry. Yeah. That's not the right one. Two before. Hey, there it is. Okay. So we will make a shared presentation here, and I will talk about 12 minutes, and then Sten will take over. And after 20 minutes, Ali will continue talking about monitoring of these demonstrations. What we will talk about is, as you already saw in the film, the Østerby area, which is served by low-temperature district heating, using the pipes that Peter Jorsal just told about. And it is supplied with energy from the shopping mall that you see in the center of the picture. And what you also see on the picture is some white buildings around, which is the new district coming up. And you see the blue lines, that is the district cooling network in the area. And there's a little orange spot, which is where the new town hall is coming up. And that's also being connected to the district cooling and district heating system. When you do such a project, you have to think on how to design the low temperature grid, and we have done a lot of work on that and tried with the new pipes as twin pipes. but you also like to see how can you get the renewables, the solar energy into the system and make the CD2 shopping mall a prosumer, both delivering heat and cool and electricity to grids and taking them off the other way around in other periods. And what should be the business model for doing that in the best way? And if you look a little back, then CD2 established this huge PV installation on the roof with 16,000 square meters of PV to about 2 megawatt peak back in 2014. But since then, they have changed the lighting and to LED and the cooling concept and the ventilation principles and so on, and that has reduced the cooling need of the building, and also the electricity consumption of the building. So now they are in a position where they actually have to feed into the electrical grid the surplus production. And that goes together with a tariff that was favorable for the first 10 years, but after 10 years, that is in 2024, it falls down to the normal market price. So now there's a big difference for the future between when you feed it into the tariff, what you get, and what you pay to get the power back. So that makes you think, can you make a business in another way where you could use the electricity inside the building? And there the district heating utility approached the CD2 and asked them, could we rent a room in your basement and there produce or install a combined cooling and heating facility and use the electricity from PV for that. And you will not have to operate it. We will invest in what is needed. We will take over the operation, and you will just get the heat and the cooling. And on the other hand, we will use and buy some of your cheaper electricity. And then, of course, it's a question of it's a win-win. The price will be somewhere in between what is the feed-in tariff and what is the normal cost for the utility to buy electricity. So that's interesting. And also, besides having this capacity available at the site, you don't need to have the peak power or peak cooling production at the site, because it's connected to the district cooling grid, and there you can top up with external cooling when needed, the few hours where you have the peak in the CD2 mall. And also they had an old installation of cooling that had to be replaced, and one machine had to go away, another one could be repaired and still used. And they got rid of cooling towers with a Legionella and Pontiac disease risk from the vapors from this wet cooling tower. So now there is an installation where you have different supplies out. You have the district cooling, both for the center and for the outside grid, with different temperatures in summer, where it's the lowest temperature on the grid, but raising it in spring and fall. And then you have district heating out in a low level, but not the very low for the surrounding new district. That's 60 to 70 degrees and 45 back, roughly. And then the test of the Østerby, where it's going down to 55, 30 in the design with a separate line. And what you have now in that system is that you have, when you see the new solar heat pump central, it's connected to the district cooling grid. You have other consumers. You also have another energy central with an ATIS system. And that means that you can operate the solar heat pump plant when the sun is shining during summer, and you're not dependent on so much on the load on the cooling grid, because you can also cool down in principle the ATIS, and then you can still continue producing heat from that source. So there are some optimization issues here on how to get all these units to play together in an optimal way. And that is yet to come to totally optimize that interplay. So the business model here is that you have both selling the cooling and the heating at the installation. And if you look at the operational hours, you see here on the x-axis, you see that when you have more than 1,000 operation hours, then you have a surplus in your economy, and we expect it to raise up to 3,000 hours and finally. And that's for the company. The yellow line shows the society economic result, which is has some other conditions, and also includes the cost of providing an alternative cooling installation, and therefore you have a better business case there. The simple payback is calculated to roughly 10 years. And if you look at primary energy COP of the system, then it's 2.5 when you multiply the factors on electricity. The COP on the system, adding both cooling and heating, is about 5.2. So it's rather good installation that way. The other one we heard about was at the data center for the bank. And what is there is that it has higher temperatures on the cooling side, and it has much more operation hours. But here you're not selling the cooling, you're only selling the heat or producing the heat. And the utility has to buy the electricity for it and also pay for the heat pump installation. But the center is giving the room for free to put in the installation. We will hear later what is a payback figure on that. But here the COP on primary energy again is 3.1. Finally, I will talk about the connection between Østerby and CD2, and that is with a kind of transmission line, not so long, about close to 400 meters. And there we have tried to make it, as we heard from also in Sweden yesterday, to put on some heat collector pipes that recovers the heat loss from the pipe. So it's a zero loss pipe. So it doesn't add to the grid losses in Østerby area. We don't have the monitoring results yet, but we have a lot of Heat2 simulations, and that shows that you don't only get the recovered the heat loss from the pipe. You also gain heat from the ground surrounding, so you can end up by roughly 167, it's calculated to, kilowatt hours per meter of pipe added to the system. And that is on the condition that you have about 37 degrees C on your brine circuit. And with that, I will give the word to you, Sten, and please continue.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to find my place in front of the camera and you. It has been really a pleasure working on this project. So many talks, because now I'm going to talk about the end users, the customers. So many talks, so many cups of coffee, so many times we have been out, you could say, doing the same kind of explanation over and over again. And yesterday we heard that even though we have been trying very hard, the interview of the end users, it hasn't really turned out that they have been convinced, all of them. But we only needed them to be convinced when making the decision. So what I'm going to talk about here is how to design the decision process, because without the customers in our hands signing up for the new system, we wouldn't sort of be able to do the implementation here in Østerby. What we have up on the screen is a map of the 4 areas that are connected, the 158 terraced houses. You see them Gård and Taastrup 1 and 2 and 3 surrounding, and then the kindergarten in the middle. That was the ones that we got in our hands. I will explain that a little later, how and why we didn't get the rest, because that's bigger. It irritates me a little, but we couldn't convince them. We'll come back to that. But the whole idea here is that in the beginning, when developing this area, there's 4 quarters, you could say. This is one of them. They decided to connect to the district heating company using sort of another organization, taking over a heat association, to taking over the responsibility to develop the grid. And then connect the individual customers, making it, you could say, more complicated. But at the time for the decision in the first place, it was the best choice. And now, 40 years after, it turns out that, well, it's not a good idea anymore, because the district heating company has now developed and has been able to take over, you could say, responsibility and all what is needed to have a simple contract with the district heating company, and everything is taken care of. So this is what we got connected. And yeah, well, we needed a detailed plan, a detailed action plan, because we had to find out what is the pros and cons from the different perspectives of the individual decision makers, and that was rather complicated. We can have a talk about that later. But I guess what was in the beginning, we talked about climate change, and you could say all the positive things. But in the end, as every time, it turns out it's the bill. Can I save just a tiny amount of money to say yes? And we focused on that in our talks. So we calculated down to each individual 158 customers, last year's bill, coming year's bill, and what's going to happen if I say no. And it was what is going to happen if I say no that convinced them. So, well, you're going to have big trouble if you're not saying yes to this. We could say leave it, but in the end, luckily enough, they said yes. And before, it was partly retrofitted buildings. They have sort of maintained the buildings, and they were therefore actually ready to go for low temperature district heating. There was no need to change the installations. We could measure that. They were ready. So and then of course we were interested in could we actually do better than the plus 35% heat loss from the connection point to the district heating and down to the end users. A huge amount of waste, high temperature network, and they were ready to have it replaced. Luckily enough, they have put aside for some of the new piping systems. So they were partly prepared, but not in the individual sections of the area. So after the new pipes are now owned, as we have heard, by the district heating company. We have a grid loss that is very much on the good side, very, very impressive, and everything is taken care of by the district heating company, and they don't need to have any worries whatsoever. Even the heat exchanger, all of them in the end signed it up for a contract so that it's the district heating company that has taken over the responsibility for the ownership and maintain the substations in the flats, which is something that they in the end, well, that's a good idea. And now to the key figures that convinced everyone. And now this is the top level, you could say, the sum of the 4 areas, the 150 something tenants. It's 0.5 million kroners per year they save, 2,900 kroners per dwelling per year. So that's of course a convention figure, and here is it it's in euros. And that's the point of when we sort of touched the enter in the Excel sheet, and the decisions were taken. Now we see with the rising prices on everything else than district heating, they are probably more happy now because that has been kept on a stable level instead of the electricity prices going up. There was one customer that said, well, I'm not interested. He has now moved and been connected. So everyone is connected. That was more or less if I'm running out of time, but here you see, as Reto explained, we have put in the pipe network into to simulation tools and made very thorough calculations on where to put the pipes in order to have the shortest distance, to get as close as we can on the customers, to minimize the length, to pressure the dimensions so we get as little flow as possible, and to do the last bits and pieces of optimization that need to be put an extra pump into the system so that it will be able to reduce the temperature even further. So that's to come. But I think, well, I'm happy for all the coffee I had and the 158 dwelling owners or renters that finally signed up for this new system. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sten. How's your stomach after all this coffee?
Well,
it's okay. Let's see if we have an audience question here for you quickly before we move on. We have a tight second session here before lunch. All right, let's continue, but you'll be able to come back for a short panel talk later on. Now we turn to Ali Mwaliemi, postdoctoral fellow, Lund University, who will share his findings in the monitoring of cool DH here in Høje-Taastrup. There he is. Excellent. Welcome, Ali. I'll move this so you have more space.
Okay. Thanks for your introduction. Hello, everyone, here in the conference room and also online audiences. I'm Ali Mwaliemi from Lund University, and I am happy to be here and participate in this fantastic event. Yesterday we talked about monitoring results in Swedish side, and today we continue with monitoring results in Danish side with under title of Distributed Heating Stations Supplied by a Low Temperature District Heating System. It's a part of monitoring and evaluation of cool DH projects, and it can be divided in 4 categories: energy performance, environmental impacts, economic analysis, and finally social studies that yesterday Kerstin talked about that and explained about the social feedbacks in this regard. So today we just talk about the 3 remaining categories: energy, environmental, and economic analysis. I should mention that these results in this presentation are preliminary results, since the project is ongoing and the monitoring phase is on progress. But the final conclusions will be published in the final reports. As Reto and Astrid explained about the different installations in the Danish side, you can see them again here in this picture, but in this presentation we focus in the converted low temperature network plus flat stations or district heating units in the flat stations plus prosumer at Nordia as a bank's data center, with emphasizing just on important points. Since therefore, if it seems something to be unclear or incomplete during the presentation, we can discuss about that later. Low temperature network is including 158 houses, plus kindergarten, as Sten explained. But inside of these 3 houses, there are flat stations that they include 2 heat exchanger, one for space heating and one for providing domestic hot water. In this picture, you can see the temperature distribution of the network since last year. And as you can see, the actually low temperature network started in last March, in March 2021. And average low temperature supply temperature is near 70 degrees. But in the last winter, because of the to provide the all customers and the end users, in the last, actually the last end users in the network, they had to increase the supply temperature to near to 80. But it will be decreased again, and it's planned to decrease this supply temperature. And average return temperature is relatively fixed, near to 38 degrees. And here you can see heat profile of the network. Heat supply is in, you can see in the red line, and the pipe losses is in orange line, and the percentage of heat losses is in the pale color. And as expected, the heat losses in summer is much more than other months. But as I said, there is a lot of space to improvement the network by reducing the distribution temperatures. Could be down by decreasing the return temperature in customer side, and then decreasing the supply temperature as well. For example, from the current situation in 40 degrees to 58, 30 degrees in return temperature, to decrease heat losses of the network. In addition, there is indoor sensors in 11 dual links to compare indoor temperature in the dual links before and after the project. But there was not any significant difference in this regard. And the minimum indoor temperature was 20 degrees in the last November, and it shows that the low temperature system and this new system, converter system, can meet comfort temperature for inhabitants. Then economic data. In the last year, the customer paid near to 52,000 euros, and the total cost of the network, this data is just for flat stations, and this heating units in the flats or houses. And the total cost for the flat station was about 547,000 euros. So by calculating in these figures, the payback time could be, say, it's 10.4 years. For flat stations. But regarding to network, total investment was near to 2 million euros, and the payback time is near to 13.5 years. The second installation that we talk today is about Nordea data center. And the purpose of this installation was to exchange surplus heat of cooling with the low temperature network. As you can see here, the heating production in last year in red line is about 9.8 gigawatt hour, and cooling production in blue line is 7 gigawatt hour. And electricity consumed in this period of time was 30 gigawatt hour in green line. And then performance of the heat pump installed in Nordea. You can see COP for heating in the orange columns, that it's in average was 3.2 in the 73 and 43 degrees circuit, and for COP for cooling in the blue columns, as you can see, it's an average is 2.3, and in circuit of 9 and 14 degrees. So we can say that total COP in the last year in average was 5.5. Oops. Okay. Then environmental impacts. We have some references in this regard, and regarding CO2 emissions in the by using the heat pump in Nordea. According to our calculations, there was a CO2 reduction of more than 600 tons. And then we had a comparison with the Swedish side. the same as we did yesterday. That what happened if we would install this heat pump with this situation in Lund, for example, or Sweden. In that case, the CO2 emission increased by 5 tons. But again, it shows that we should pay attention to pay attention to local conditions of each project. We can't say the same thing for all situations and say that it affects the same things for all locations and countries. For example, in this case, Lund and Österby is very close to each other, 80 kilometers, less than 1 hour. But as you can see, because of the difference in the energy matrix in two countries, the results for environmental impacts is different. But I just mentioned again that we are comparing two good environmental friendly systems together. So in this figure, 5 tons can be considered or can be neglected. But for primary energy saving, it was 6.1 gigawatt hour last year for a heat pump at Nordia. And regarding of economic data, total project costs near to 1,600,000 euros. And the annual saving was 250,000 euros. And we can say that payback period is about 6.4 years. But if using the another method that we called it heating bonus method, that is not time to explain that, the payback period can be decreased to 5.5 years. And finally, our Cool-DH team at Lund University, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ali. A question here, and please raise your hand if you have one to you here, is the comparison and what you mentioned, that we have to be very careful not just to assume that one size fits all. Would you say that this is common knowledge in this field, that we really, really have to be very focused on the differences and the outcome in terms of carbon? Because this really showed it with pretty big numbers, the difference. Even if it's two systems that are climately well adapted, it's still huge differences. How well is this knowledge spread that you really, really have to look at the differences?
In fact, as I said, yes, we are comparing two good systems to each other. But when we compare it with, for example, fossil fuels, we can see that, as I said, 5 tons can be neglected. Because in that case, it could be, for example, a few thousand tons per year. So in this regard, 5 tons is really nothing. But otherwise, we are using a waste heat, and we should use heat pump in this regard. The other important thing is that in regarding the power sector, we should we should look at this section, the whole of them together, not to focus on in a small system, and see the marginal market of the power section. And it's a bit challenging and discussable that how to calculate the CO2 emissions. It can be discussed for many hours. That's
well, thank you so much, Ali. Let's see if there is a question here in the auditorium. We have a minute or two. And let's see if we did get one from the Menti. No, but you will be able to come back for the short panel discussion, and here is some combined sweets from Denmark again. You got one back yesterday, you get another one.
I gave them to my children yesterday.
All right, did they like them?
Yes, I can use it myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. And now we are happy. And we will give a warm hand to Kasper Korsholm Østergaard. He is R&D manager at Metroterm. And also we welcome Reto Hammershøi back to talk about visions towards 5th generation. And Reto, you might wonder, why did I not get the candy? But you will get it now.
And Sten also needs some candy.
He absolutely will have.
Okay, so I'm back. And I just want to make a short introduction before you take over. It's mainly your presentation. But when you're thinking and dreaming in such a project, and people start talking about 5th generation of district heating, you might invent something new or think about something new. And we have dreamed about having developing a flex booster concept, we call it in the project. And that is a system where you can choose the district heating temperature as you like, between 0 and 70 degrees. There will be something in the buildings that boosts the temperature, so you can supply also the one-string installations that need the high temperature, and even if the neighbors are working with floor heating, or your need of heating of domestic hot water. You need a unit that could help you with that. And also some units when you pass by with your district heating pipes and there is a small amount of surplus heat, a small heat pump that could pick up that heat, put it into the system. That is one thing. Another thing is all the talk about you need to design your district heating to the needs of the heating domestic hot water that is 55 or higher. Why don't we get some rules that says that you have to make anti-legionella treatment in the buildings, at least if they have a certain size? I think that is to come, and then you can reduce the temperature in the buildings. Or in smaller buildings, you could have this unit I talked about to boost the temperature and deliver sufficiently high, safe temperature on your hot water. Then we meet sometimes who is going to produce the energy. Is that the utility, or can it be partly at the consumer? And I hope that we can end up at a place where these two work together and make the best optimal production of the energy needed. We heard about the plastic pipes, and I think also when you look at LCA considerations to leave steel and have more plastic that's more environmental friendly, you probably also have much longer lifespan of your system. But we need this new developments of joints that can be approved. And then we need to have to be flexible and introduce more PV solar energy somehow in the system. And that ended up with an application to EUDP, which is a Danish national funding program, where we and Metrotherm have applied. And that is basically that you in the buildings have a new district heating unit, which we will hear about, and that can be partly supplied with PV energy for a small built-in heat pump. Then you have a grid with flexible temperature. That means that you have in winter you have higher temperature, so you have a big delta T, so dimensions are small. In summer you can maybe go down to very low temperatures and even extract energy at a central place by heat pump units in the buildings. And then you have a heat pump centrally that supplies the district with another type of heat pump, also powered by PV when sun is shining. And finally, you have a peak installation where what could be used there, green methanol. That is actually liquid wind. So if you produce methanol from wind energy during summer and or a whole year, and then you have a storage tank to give your peak at the site, then you are totally on renewable energy and wind and solar energy in such an area. And this is going to happen in reality within the next year close to here in Avedøre, as part of Avedøre Green City project. And there we will have 300 consumers being added, and that's both new consumers and an old village with all kind of different types of buildings, different demands. So we will really test if this is the solution for that. And that's a collaboration between LEED, Metrotherm, and COVI, and Rubrik, and Eberconsult, and with our district heating. You will for sure hear more about that, but now I will ask you to introduce us to the missing link.
The missing link. Okay. Thank you, Reto. I attended this conference yesterday on the, from the YouTube channel, and I heard Christina Lyngerud from the Swedish Environmental Agency talking about the reuse heat project and the stakeholders, the identified stakeholders. I think she was missing one, and that was the producer of component suppliers, basically, of all this equipment. We may not be the most important one, but I think projects like this, where we, in a very early stage together, identify the needs for the future heat pumps, for example, or substations, that's very important also. So, what I'll just take you through is our take on this as a component supplier, the core of this presentation is the presentation of our new heat pump. So just shortly about the company. It's a traditional producing company. We've been here for 100 years last year, producing water heaters for many years. Initially electrical water heaters, then for gas boilers, then district heating, then heat pumps, and so on. Since 2003, we have been a part of the Swedish group, this being a Swedish-Danish collaboration project, and I'm happy to announce that we're part of Nibe Industries in Markerud. So I'm not really biased towards heat pumps, because we have 3 different component or product groups: water heaters, as I mentioned, heat pumps, and then district heating substations. We're supplying to the domestic market mainly, and light commercial substations would sometimes be in the megawatt class, but normally it's a lot smaller. It's for individual housing, flat stations, for example. So about sector coupling, well, looking at this, I think we have we have a strategy. First of all, it's written cast in stone that we want to be a part of this transition also to a sustainable society. And when we're looking at our product groups, it's just lying in front of us. It's just really about getting these engaged and trying to get the best of all the technologies. The new Metro Delta, the unit is called Metro Delta. The Delta being the lift, you can say, of energy. And the background for this is a little bit about the whole, the years before this. We started thinking about this 4 years ago, and it was basically the whole concept of phasing out gas from the production of heat, space heat, and hot water. So we wanted to develop this liquid to water heat pump, which could go for generation 5 thermonets, whatever you call it, but ultra low temperature district heating applications, or any other microgrids, waste heat from low valuable heat from surplus heat. And then finally, another interesting part, which is PVT panel applications. And for those of you who are not so familiar with that technology, it's a PV, that's just a standard solar thermal panel, as we'll see on CD2 shortly. And the T is for the thermal part. So it's a combined panel where you can basically, instead of using the ground or the brine circuit putting into the ground for ground source heat pump, you put it on the roof instead, together with the PV panel, and by that you avoid having to dig into the ground, planning permissions, protection of ground source, groundwater sources, and so on. So and being being successful in making such a heat pump, we also understood that we need to make something which is similar to a similar gas boiler. So a small unit, wall hang unit, 3 kilowatt nominal at low temperatures, and then somewhat more at higher temperatures, which I'll come back to shortly. Also, well, there's a whole discussion about dirty cooling and clean cooling. Dirty cooling being this class of refrigerants now, where we've fixed the issue with ozone layers many years back, decades back. We have now a lot of refrigerants with high global warming potentials, and we're trying to fix that now and moving into a new class of chemistry, which just turns out probably to have some so far not fully understood issues with resilient chemistry in the atmosphere. So we opted for a propane and natural refrigerant for this unit. Wall hanged CUP, well, hopefully better than what's on the market, and certainly hopefully better than with the non-natural refrigerants. We also wanted to make a unit which is fully versatile, and so opted both for passive heating and cooling. I'll come back to that. And then active cooling. Active cooling is important if you're using it with these roof panels, because you cannot get rid of your heat through the network in the summer. You need to reverse the refrigerant circuit and get rid of the heat on the roof. Yes. So this is the PNID, or the process and instrumentation diagram from the unit, and what's inside the dotted line, that's the unit itself. And on the source side to the left, well, it could be standard district heating, ultra-low temperature district heating. It could be thermonets, cold networks, microgrids, or it could be these PVT panels here shown on the attic or the annex of this house in Gentofte, not far from here. The heat pump itself, in the middle you see the refrigerant circuit, so it's just a standard refrigerant circuit with a compressor and a condenser, control valve, and an evaporator. Then on the source side, well, yes, here we also have this four-way valve, so we can reverse the refrigerant circuit. Now on the source side, before we basically utilize the heat for evaporating for the heat pump, for the evaporator, we can direct the flow into this passive heat exchanger, where we can just exchange directly between the source and the sink. That's very good for passive cooling, but certainly also for passive heating, which we'll utilize heavily in the flex booster concept in Avedøre. Then back to a circulation pump, the evaporator, and out of the unit again. On the sink side, we have the return flow from the dwelling into the passive heat exchanger, circulation pump, the condenser, backup heating element for colder periods, and then a three-way valve to direct between the space heating and the hot water production. This is how it looks inside. I have a mock-up just outside the coffee table. Yeah, size-wise, it's hopefully we've succeeded. It's somewhat like a gas boiler, slightly larger perhaps than a standard substation, district heating substation. What you'll see here in the shiny part, the metal part in the middle, that's the whole refrigerant module, where all the refrigerant circuit is located. And you have utilities, pumps, valves, and so on underneath, and the controller at the top. We've made it in a way so it's relatively easy to disconnect, to isolate the refrigerant module, get it out, and put a new one in. From the understanding that we now have technology which is mechanics, you know, so it's slightly more complicated than or more complex than a standard substation, and you really need we want to avoid having a refrigerant engineer standing out there with their hands trying to fix stuff. So getting something in and out quickly and do repair if required and back at the workshop, that's the idea here. Now, talking about the operational envelope, it's all about really expanding this. If we compare the envelope for this unit with a typical ground source heat pump, which potentially you could use for something like what we're doing in Avedøre now, it typically the source temperature, which you'll see in the x-axis, cannot typically typically go lower than -7 and up to 30 degrees. So you talking about this very flexible district heating concept, we get into problems at the higher temperatures, above 30 degrees Celsius. Then we need to do some shunt protection, high temperature protection. But basically, that's like putting your foot on the brake while you're accelerating, wasting energy. Likewise, because we want to use the unit for these PVT panels, we also need to go lower for the winter period. We've also worked on expanding to the higher supply temperatures for this Legionella issues, so we don't have to rely on a backup heating element for doing high temperature Legionella protection. Yes, performance-wise, I think we're pleased with the numbers. I will not go through them, but you can see here with different brine temperatures and water temperatures on the heat source side, and different sink temperatures, whether it's a low temperature system or a standard radiator system. But there are very decent COPs and also heating capacities. You can see here brine 0, water 35. That's the 3 kilowatt nominal. The domestic hot water, also a very satisfactory COPs on that. That gives a lot of pluses, so we are right where we should be with a modern unit. Cooling performance slightly lower. It's a heat pump. It's not made for. It's not it's not first priority cooling, but they still have some decent cooling capacities. Just to illustrate what we're doing with the Flex Booster concept here, this is 2 graphs. The one to the left showing the COP, different source temperatures and different supply temperatures on the y-axis. On the figure to the right, you'll see the source temperature versus the supply temperatures, but now it's the heating capacities. And as for all heat pumps, you can see a very big dependency on the source, especially the source temperature on the capacity of a unit like this. And here, you can see, relatively low capacity at low temperatures. But if we're going into these temperatures, as Retro presented previously, 30 and above, then we get into something like 5-6 kilowatts, and that's just the heat pump alone. And if we go back to this figure here, you can see the right lower corner. That's what's called passive heating. That's basically just a standard substation, the district heating substation, where we can do direct heat of the house. So if we're doing that together with the heat pump, we have capacities near 10 easily, so we can actually fulfill the requirements for many of these older houses with old one-string radiator systems also. The other issue is a standard heat pump. You're normally running with high flows and low delta T's, but in a district heating system and an old radiator systems, we need high delta T's on both sides. If we engage the heat pump together with the passive heat exchanger, that's really where we can actually deliver very low return temperatures to the district heating plant. Finally, I'll just briefly brief you on where we are with the project and the product. We have, as I said, been working on this for some years. It ended up last winter with a production of almost 100 units for a large project down near Rotterdam in a town called Barendrecht. A bit like here, basically, a little bit outside Rotterdam in Holland. And this is new houses, new flats, 4 stories, 3 stories flats, and with these PVT panels. But this is our final, full-scale test, you can say, before we release the product. You'll see here on the left the panels on the roof, and to the right you'll see the installation with a heat pump and some buffer and some expansion vessels. We have this tool where we have a full control. Basically, we have all units online. You can see each line here represents a unit in Holland, and we like green dots. That's really where the units are working as they should. And we can go in and we can get error logs and the graphs, as you can see there, and really understand the software, how it works, and push new software into the units if required. We're looking forward to the release of this product and the release in the Averua project. And I think that's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Kasper. Let's see if we have a question from the auditorium here.
There's one over there.
There is one over there. There we go. Sten.
Yeah, hi. This was a really, really fantastic product that you are ready to launch. I've missed it for so many years. So can you tell us something about your ideas about pricing? I guess you want to have it to be compatible, but you have an idea? Are you looking into a leasing model, as you say, or how do you want to approach the market?
Well, thank you, Sten.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So you can say us being a component suppliers, if you like, unit suppliers, we have no interest in, as far as I'm aware, being in the R&D department, but we have no interest in lease, in going into that market. We will supply technology for fulfilling the scope of or the task we all have to get lower the temperatures. Price-wise, it's a heat pump, but we have worked hard on making it in materials and so on, where we're not we're not overspeccing this. This is going for the mid-tier market, you can say. So it will be something like a substation heat pump there in between, I would say. But no, that's all I can say about it right now.
All right. We have 10 minutes now before it's lunch, and I'd like to ask the speakers that came after the fika, after the coffee break, to join me here on stage just for a quick sum up. So all of you speakers that are still present here in the room, please join me here on stage for and let's see if we have any questions that were not caught in the previous, after your presentations, and also if we have other questions coming from the mentee. So this is your chance. If you have a pressing question to any of the speakers here, those of you watching online, please type it in the mentee. And if it's directed to a specific person, please write the name of the person. And those of you here, just raise your hand and direct the question. All right. Yes. Almost.
Damaged.
Thank you.
Yeah, is this the right? Yeah. So Dorte Østergaard from Plan Energy. I'm curious about return temperatures from these new substations in Østerby. So we could see from the monitoring that they were slightly above 30 degrees right now, at least. And I'm curious to know if you know more about how they work and what causes higher return temperatures than anticipated. I think this is very interesting for how to dimension the pipes in the future. For example, you also said you made a big effort on reducing pipe sizes and so on.
Thank you for your question.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, yesterday we saw the effect of doing the right adjustment of all these flat stations that were called yesterday district heating units. And I think that is one of the issues, to target the consumers, which spoils the total system by having a wrong adjustment. And a reason why they have wrong adjustment is probably because the booster pump is not yet installed. And then if you have too little supply, then you try to do something and you turn on what can be turned. And so suddenly you have a situation where you give a problem for the other consumers. And I'm sure that yesterday we had a return temperature of 34 degrees at Explorian. And it's similar technique, so that will also come here.
Thank you very much, Reto. Any more questions from the auditorium? I think people are... You have another one. You should have let you keep the mic. There you go.
Went better this time. I'm also curious about the pipe dimensions, because in traditional district heating, we typically dimension for high temperatures at peak load, and then reduce the temperatures for the summer so that we can maintain a more or less constant flow in the network. So do you dimension for 55 degrees supply temperature even at peak? Or do you still dimension for a higher supply temperature in the peak situation?
I guess that's where to again,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yes.
Well, the system is meant to run at low temperature most of the year, but there's a possibility of increasing. So on the very peak, it's maybe 65 or maybe shortly 70 it could be. So it's designed to be low temperature from 0 degrees outside temperature and the rest of the year. And these days, it's, I mean, most of the year that is above 0.
All right. Thank you, Etu. There's a question here from the from Enti about the district heating pipe with heat recovery. Doesn't the cold brine enhance the heat loss compared to a situation with no heat recovery and cool brine? I think that's you again, huh?
Sorry. But yes, it does, but we recover the heat and we have a very good insulation in between. So the major energy comes from the surroundings. So it's not a big additional loss. I mean, we have between 4 and 7 degrees or even higher in the brine temperature, and that's very close to ground temperature. So it doesn't increase the heat loss much.
Thank you. We have another question. Is the load shifting more challenging in 5G networks? Who would like to answer that one? Go ahead, Astrid.
Well, I would say that since we are getting to a more digital version of the world, you could say, and also making it able to have controls in the houses, you know, the real customer side, then it's going to be much easier to utilize the capacity of the houses, the patterns of the tenants, when are they showering, and that'll be saved somewhere and can be used for optimization. So then you will be able to push whenever you are ready to deliver from the grid side. And what has been done on optimization, the grids, is now moving into the houses.
Fantastic. All right. I think we are running out of the questions here, but I'd like to. Well, you have a question, Kasper. Yes,
yeah,
excellent.
Okay. I have a question for Høje-Taastrup district heating and planning. It was mentioned earlier that the rules and regulations sometimes they are in the way for what you want to do and what you want to plan. Now, for a number of years, there's been in Denmark this test where I think 7 municipalities have been given free range for on the elderly and the social areas. I just wonder if something similar was decided by the politicians, would you design differently? Would you plan differently than you do today?
Well, I don't know, but. I know a lot of district heating company, they think this project improvements we have to do about the society economic is wrong, but somehow I think it's okay. What a lot of municipalities has to learn and do is to make this quicker to get that adopted. In Høje-Taastrup municipality, we have talked about it, and it takes us about 2 months to get a project through the political. So I think you can do a lot that way. You can do a lot for a district heating company to talk and have meetings with your municipality to get further. So I think it's different, and I think it's okay as it is.
Well, thank you very much. You have another question.
No, well, as a citizen of the municipality, I think what has been seen here is that you've piled up the different projects. The projects have been piled up, ready to be to push the button whenever the conditions were ready. So I think it's about being prepared. So line up whatever need to be converted, and then press the button when the economic data are correct. I think that's maybe more planning, more detailed planning to be ready, as it has been seen here.
That was a good reflection coming from a citizen and also, of course, an expert. All right, folks. What fantastic, two exciting days for me as a moderator. There is a site visit, and the bus leaves at 1 o'clock. And you will, of course, have the site visit at the City to Prosumer place that we already heard a lot about. PV powered heat pump, and also Österby low temperature district heating district, and a solar district heating plant, and large-scale district heating thermal energy storage. So there's lots of goodies waiting for you now after lunch. Speaking of goodies, there's a lunch box right outside that you can grab, and if you'd like to sit outside or stroll with a colleague that you just met here and find a place to eat lunch, that's a good idea, I think. But don't miss the bus. It leaves at 1 o'clock outside of the venue here. And as a moderator here, I'd like to thank all of you. Excellent presentations, excellent collaboration in this project, and as a citizen, I leave this venue very hopeful. Thank you very much.
And a big hand for you, Katarina. Thank you for moderating.
You didn't get your candy.